Citizens of Phandalin will be a community roleplay opportunity where people can have a character that they can have fun with. If you just want to jump in the tavern and do some in character roleplay, if you have a character build that is maybe not optimized or considered subpar and you want to try to play it and make it usable. If you can't commit to a full campaign but are looking for the feel of a campaign and commitment to a character that you have created, those are options for you to check out the channel. Join when you can, no expectations, and have some fun.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. How is it, everyone? Are we muted? Can everybody hear us?
Huh?
I don't know if we're muted.
It doesn't seem to be muted.
We do have the Nyx and Cinder in the wrong places.
But I am perfectly fine.
And we also have Nyx having her face cut off. Like, we see like a quarter of their face.
That one's not on me.
No, it's Ramon, but we can't hear you, Ramon, by the way.
You keep muting yourself. What's that? Good lady. Sorry, Nix.
Yeah, excuse me. It's Miss, actually.
Oh, Nix. Nix.
Now Larkin and Cinder are switched.
Oh, come on!
One day we shall have a good tech problem-free stream. Not today.
Carlton, you are also not very centralized.
Ryan.
Okay.
I'm in the center of mine.
Okay. All right. So, welcome everyone to our new time slot for Legends of Methis. We are D&D Play 20. We are a bunch of nerds and really sweet people who are part of an amazing community on our Discord server and here on the channel, where we like to support each other and have fun and play Dungeons and Dragons amongst other TTRPGs. So, welcome. I am Vagabunda, or Meridiana, or the Kick Butt DM, however you've gotten to know me. And I will be your DM for tonight. This is a homebrew campaign in a homebrew world, so bear with us if you first time seeing it. We always do a bit of a recap. And if there's things you don't understand, because we're at a different point of the, quite far into the story, check out our previous episodes and subscribe to have access to those. So,
Not it.
Not it.
I actually like to give the chance to the players to earn some reroll points. They're kind of like inspiration, but you can stack them for doing the recaps.
But the players don't like gaining benefits.
No, it usually becomes Nyx's corner, and I assume she would like to do it again. So I will just ask once again the player to look at the stream and see how he's centralized.
The
Back
players-
up from your camera, Miss Nyx,
Yeah,
please.
like you're like this.
Your camera's too close. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So,
Woo!
Okay. That was all about angles, I guess.
so do you want to do the quick recap of last time?
Sure. Nyx's Corner. It sponsors Legends of Methis, of course. Yeah. So, last time on Nyx's Notes, or Nyx's Corner, I have not decided which one is better. I think Nyx's Notes, you know. Nyx's Notes brings to you the scandal at the arena, where Akra, Nexus' lovely mother that's never hurt a fly, faced off against her nemesis, which had bested her before, but through very unorthodox means. It was one of those fights that she felt she had been cheated. And as it turns out, she had been. Her opponent, this very arrogant looking Dragonborn, Antos Nakul, had turned out to be casting magic, but largely undetected. It's how he had bested her before, and it's almost how he bested her again. However, with Nyx and co being witness to this, they all jumped into action, and Nyx took a few years to get to the judges. She is small, but it's very crowded. Cinder decided to do Cinder things and impersonate
The enemy.
said Atmos, who actually turned out to be, wait for it, turned out to be a Rakshasa. For those who don't know, Nyx did a whole dissertation on them. Backwards opposable thumbs. They look like humanoid cats, basically, like tigers. More depends, Don't want to discriminate. They're very feline-looking devils. Most annoyingly of all, Rakshasas have a certain degree of magical immunity. So good luck trying to cast spells on them. They're just gonna laugh at you. It's all Nyx's dissertation on Rakshasas. It's a very interesting read. I recommend it. I think we're gonna post it in the main library. That the Sphinx guards. I might put that volume there. So the match was stopped. The Rakshasa, not even sure if that was Amtos' his real name, most likely not. Tried to flee and try to take someone along for the ride, but was foiled. So they just disappeared on their own lonesome. Chaos erupted because Nyx got to the judges, and one of them turned out to be in cahoots with said Amtos. She got mad at him, kicked him in the shin, and he fell into the arena. All the security came. Cinder had decided to, I guess I said, he impersonated Amtos. And since the real Amtos had left, they all tried to arrest Cinder. However, it was not the most chaotic thing, since Akra was still charmed and had to be physically restrained by her son Nexus. He did very well for a man with a lot of mama issues. He did good. Like, he wasn't as frightened as he could have been of her. Like, I think he was more scared of how she would pretty much break his friends into pieces if she wasn't restrained. Maybe that's what motivated him to get past those issues. Who knows? Nyx is writing a paper on it. It's a psychological issue. She's not very good at that, so it's gonna take a while. So after that was resolved, and after Akra had calmed down, and after it turned out that the brothel madam was also a Rakshasa, which was a development, but I think they kind of already suspected there was more fiends in that place. It was time for the victory parade, as one of the referees that had actually been impartial declared her the winner. And it was time for the balloon parade, as she'd been promised. And so off they went on their victory parade. This is the time where Akra was informed that the parade was not just going to be localized, that they were going to take the balloon and head off to the wastes to help Cinder and her son overcome their conditions. She loved that. She's like, X is like, Mom, by the way, we're stealing this balloon. She's like, good on you, son. I am proud of you. Godspeed.
Pretty much.
and with her mother's blessing, we did just that. And I guess that's where we left it. Cruising in a very Nyx did a good, Nyx is very proud of this. She's not, she's more an alchemist than a technician, but she's very proud that the balloon is for now in working order and heading in the right direction. Again, so she thinks. We'll find out as the DM tells us to roll.
We'll find out if we crash and burn.
We find out if we crash and burn in the next 5 minutes as well.
Yeah, no, that was pretty good recap. I will get you your reroll point. And I have a few questions for our dear players. We're gonna start with the fact that the balloon has been traveling in the general direction up and across the city because of the winds are in your favor at the minute.
Woo!
You have managed to get it's not hovering over the arena, it's kind of just going east.
We are lazily drifting.
You are lazily drifting, and when you are getting to that eastern part of the city where the arena is, as I said, Akra kind of flew down and did a 3-point landing, a superhero landing in the middle of the arena because she can fly as a half dragon, and did an amazing entrance, and everybody's cheering, and nobody's paying attention at the minute to the balloon. However, it needs steering, it needs managing. So who's doing what?
Okay, so steering and managing.
So
We need someone-
You need someone. Obviously, you need
Navigation.
You need someone navigating. You need someone as a lookout. You need someone that keeps checking and opening and closing the top and managing the amount of the continual flame that is keeping altitude on the balloon, because if you keep just going up, that's not going to work. At some point you need to stabilize and keep, and then there's air pockets and different parts with pressure, so you might need to open it more or close it. Somebody will need to be doing that.
Next will... What was it?
So you'll be controlling the direction of the ship?
Oh, yes.
Okay, for balloon.
Yeah, I was gonna say Nyx is more intimately acquainted with the workings of the balloon, so she'll keep an eye on that. No offense, Cinder. We're not gonna... leave that
Nyx
to
can't even reach it. Nyx can't reach it. How's she gonna do that?
Nyx fixed it, so she definitely can reach it.
Yeah.
I'll do
what
what's
is
left.
Use
You'll
me.
be the lookout?
Sure.
Okay. You
Should
and
we be
Nexus.
regretting this?
You and Nexus are the lookouts, both on opposite sides. Now, you all are going across the wall of the city when a realization strikes all of you that you didn't plan which way you're taking the balloon. You didn't chart a course on your map. I mean, you know it's somewhere northeast.
Well, we have the maps.
You do, but you didn't exactly plan.
We know where the city is.
Yes.
Would I be able to at the start, would I be able to generally know which way north
You
is?
still have proficiency with navigator's tools.
Probably not.
Do any of you?
But it's low enough to see the ground, right?
No.
At the minute, yes.
And as I know the area, hopefully.
To an extent, for now, maybe, yeah.
It's like every tool's but that.
Yes.
I have proficiency in cook's utensils. Ironically, no one will eat my cooking.
So if nobody has navigation tool proficiency, you're going to be rolling at a disadvantage.
Oh, bugger.
Let me respec my character real quick.
Not how it works.
Is there not a compass on board?
Does anybody own a compass?
So what?
A compass.
You know, the little
A
magnet
compass?
points northern.
Does anybody own a compass?
There should be one inbuilt in the ship. How dare they not have that?
Yeah. Very dodgy. Very dodgy maintenance on this ship, honestly.
Does anybody have proficiency with any type of vehicle?
In type of what?
No. Vehicle.
I didn't know they gave
Vehicle.
vehicles.
They do,
Gotcha.
so you can have proficiency with land vehicles or water vehicles or, yeah.
In what?
Backgrounds, some backgrounds.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know them.
Some backgrounds too.
So
Yeah.
if nobody has it,
I am proficient with a hand drum. I will beat to our death.
Actually, Nexus has proficiency with land vehicles.
Since when did he drive a car?
This is an air vehicle. Doesn't count. No.
No, but he can like give you some tips. Certain types of checks will be straight rolls.
I think this is more. Nexus, get on the wheel.
All right. So,
Adrian can guide us.
all right. So we're going to start by. I would like you to roll me a D100. One of you, doesn't matter who.
I got it. 007.
7.
My God hears me.
Let's see what the weather is.
It's not
like.
divine intervention.
Dang it.
Let's see what happens as you guys start to leave the city. In terms of the weather, as you start to leave the city, it starts to rain. Like a couple of hours into the journey, it starts to rain. It's not heavy rain, but it's raining. It doesn't affect the flame of your balloon because it's it's a spell, it's continual flame. But
affects the flame of my mood.
it definitely affects the weight and the balance of the ship, of the air balloon in this case, which I am going to take you to so you can see what you're working with. It seems like blue sky here, but it's not. Okay.
It looks like it's great weather, but it really isn't.
So I'm going to put you at the back with Nexus helping you. Nix, you need to stay here. And Cinder, where are you keeping an eye on things? Nexus can keep an eye on things at the back, but where are you?
I'll go right. I guess right there.
All right. Okay.
Is that an actual harpoon? Does that harpoon work?
There's no ammunition on it. And either
Why
of
do
them.
we have it?
Because it was built in the ship, but there's no ammunition on either one.
Nothing in the ship.
You haven't
It's
really
alright.
explored it.
We'll be launching Cinder's body parts. So.
Does the
So,
rope
as
work?
I would like everybody to make me different sets of rolls. So I want Lorcan to give me a survival check, straight roll.
Is it? Think of the Nexus. Is that why I'm getting a straight roll?
Correct.
Survival.
Yes.
Is it survival?
Yes.
I'm a survivor.
Why am I surviving something?
I need Cinder to give me a perception check.
Once I was afraid, I was petrified.
And I will need Nyx. I don't know what to ask Nyx.
You said perception?
Yes. I will need Nyx to give me an intelligence check with proficiency.
I got a dirty 20.
So like
Arcana. Is
I
that
wouldn't call it Arcana in this particular instance, but
with proficiency?
it
I'm
could
just
be
trying to think of
nature.
like
It
intelligence.
could be,
check.
are you proficient in nature?
Not proficient in nature, but not
Oh,
bad.
I'm
Just
on
give
the
me
wrong
an
account.
intelligence check and add your
Yes,
proficiency.
19 buddies.
Okay.
So you both roll 19?
I got a dirty 20.
Dirty 20. Alright.
Dirty.
Ooh. Eh.
So that makes sense. He's too busy to look out. He's too busy helping you. 15.
1 second.
Wait, 19 on real die? Who?
Me,
But you
I
said
know.
you were gonna do real die. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's 19, 20. And what is Nyx's?
13 plus proficiency. 16.
16. Alright, so, you know, you haven't really planned where you're going, but it's still close enough to the city that you kinda know. And, you know, you're managing, even though it's raining and at first it was a bit unbalanced, but you kind of got the gist of it now. And you're making your way through the air. How would you guys then chart your course to the wastelands? Or are you just kind of winging it?
Nyx would probably chart a course. Chart a course.
Nyx probably could multitask if she can.
Okay, I'm
Like
going
I
to.
think she'll alternate between checking on the continual flame and then
She'll
going
be
like
there
checking
telling
the
Nexus where
the
to
heading.
go.
Okay, sure. I will have Nexus come and basically with Nexus,
He'll be conferring with her.
he will draw on the map where
Draw on the map.
where do you want to go, what path you want to take according to Nix's instructions. So for a quick second, we're gonna go back to the main map, and I'd like Nix to draw on the map. What does she tell? It's the larger map.
Why is there a circle on?
On the larger square, where do you tell Nix's to draw the course?
In the larger square,
Yes.
direction wise.
By the way, you are
Could
technically
you give us
over
an
here.
end point?
Well, this is the wastelands over here. It's not really an end point. You can choose anywhere.
Yeah, but we know there's a specific area of the wastelands that we want to get to.
No, you don't. You don't know anything about the wastelands. You know, there's an endless sandstorm that nobody's
know
ever
we just
gone
need
past.
we need to get there. We just don't know
Yes.
where exactly
So
there.
you have to draw from where you are, more or less, which I've moved Nix's token.
What's the smallest square?
The small square was that area that you found, like a little map where Arca mentioned that now there's a massive.
Oh, there's like a little
Yeah, the one that we
shot
wanted
of
to steer clear
of
with. That's
that.
why we got a flying ship. But can the flying ship get over the mountains? That's the question.
You don't know.
So technically, I could just tell him to chart a course right through that. That's what the square is, just a little screenshot of that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I thought it was like some forbidden area. I was like, avoid at all costs kind of square. That's right.
It is an avoid at all costs, kind of. It's where the big hole is in the ground.
She would be telling him, she'd be like conferring with him. She goes,
Cinder, stop it.
I was just gonna measure it with a ruler. She's gonna tell him, she's gonna like try and chart it like
I need you to draw it. Don't
northeasterly.
use the ruler.
Yeah,
I need to.
Madam DM, I was just describing it and I was gonna do the ruler thing just now. I wasn't just gonna describe it. This is just for the game purposes. She was just going to tell him to go northeasterly, like this way. Do you want me to actually draw it? Is that okay? With
Draw
the
it
ruler?
because I need to know what you're planning.
Okay.
That's why I insisted on it. When you start saying, "Oh, I'm going to use the ruler," I'm like, "No, please draw it."
We believe in you, Nyx.
Well, it's proving a little difficult to use this thing. Oh. Gimme. There we go. Hello? You may draw. It's not drawing. See, this is why I didn't want to use. Never mind.
Not drawing.
So you have the
I was using a different tool.
You need to put your freehand.
No, I got it.
So you're trying to go through the mountains?
Over.
If it's possible, if he advises that, because that's the quicker way. If he says,
Yeah, but that's your plan. That's your plan at the
yeah,
moment.
because
Hey.
time is of essence. She goes, "Is that can we do that?" She looks at him like,
He doesn't know. You're the one who knows how the balloon.
"But you're the one that can steer. You're the navigator." She looks at him concerned.
Nyx.
You know how to
Morgan's the
handle this?
navigator.
I thought you were. She's confused because they were. Oh,
Will
okay.
the
So,
balloon
but you know
pop
how to
if we go
move
too
the ship?
high?
Will the balloon pop if we go to high, Nyx?
Do the math.
It's hard to say. It needs to confer with her notes.
So I told you that if you went by air balloon, you would take about 3 days to get there.
Yes.
It's much quicker than, and especially because you're traveling through the night and etc. So, the next set of checks I would like Lorcan to roll at disadvantage.
Oh no.
And Cinder, straight roll. And Nyx, I will say a straight roll as well.
Of what?
I may have just crashed us into a mountain.
What are we rolling
What
now?
was Nyx's roll?
You got a nat 1. Brilliant. Roll me a
That's not
D.
brilliant.
Roll me a D12.
Do I break something?
Just roll me a D12.
I got a 12. That's bad.
Okay, that's fine.
We're
roll me a
lost.
D12.
Purpose.
Peter, can you roll me a perception, please?
Got a 10.
Okay.
Perception?
Have I got into something dangerous?
Yes.
Oh no.
17.
What was Nyx rolling?
Nyx, you're doing the same shape, just in.
Okay. Nice.
Alright.
27.
27. Nyx, you're getting the rhythm of this, where the air pockets are.
It's only because you've got help. Sorry.
Even though you're like Nyx is there helping with the charting of the map and everything. Yep. It's great. Cinder, despite the rain and the dark clouds, you don't really see anything that is concerning you or that is troublesome. And Nyx comes back to Lorcan. And Lorcan's confidently steering this ship. He knows where he's going. He knows what he's doing. He is confidently. To remind everyone, he rolled a nat 1, but he thinks he's doing great. He doesn't even know. So you continue, and hours pass of this work, this labor, and then you see, I would like all of you to roll me either a history or a survival. Straight roll this time.
Ooh,
History. I mean, survival. Let's see.
13.
17.
Not bad. Not bad. Could be
23.
Okay. So, sorry, 23, 17,
13.
13. Let me
That's
do
good for me.
Nexus. Nexus got that one. Nexus starts looking at the map. And he's like, oh, we're on course. But as he says that, Nyx, you realize at first, you're like, wait a minute, when I drew that on the map, we would be passing a river right now. This is where you expect to be at this point at the end of the day? Like, roundabout there?
We are both left.
And you are starting, and Nick and Cinder sees this. You start to see, like, a veil between two mountain ranges that you're going through with a massive black hole, like miles across. And you're continuing in this direction. You're going straight through it.
Oh, great.
I love text.
She checks, she looks down, she looks at the thing, she goes to Nexus and like
Should
on his
we
leg
be-
like Nexus! Nexus!
Nexus is
Yeah,
like,
she's
"What?
like shaking.
What's wrong? We're fine.
She goes, she doesn't want to panic anyone else, she goes, can you come close to the side of the ship, please?
And at that moment,
came
Cinder
closer to the
yells
side
out,
of the
"We're
ship."
going the wrong way!"
Ignores that.
We're going the wrong way? What is he talking about?
What do you mean? It's what? I can't hear you.
She points at the map very sweetly, and then points at where they are. Out, like, look over this side and tell me what you see.
And he looks down and he's like, I
Can
see a
Cinder
massive
push him?
hole. Oh shit.
Mmm.
As
Cinder
he says,
pushes
oh,
him.
Shit. You see that Lorcan has been like doing like this on the on the rudder, and you just hear it. And he's like, "Oh, it's fine."
What?
And you rolled a nat 1.
Oh man.
Ah.
You got excited. You were having fun. And next, you hear a click of something like not quite right. And
Yeah.
Larkin is like ignoring it completely.
It's not the kind of click. For everyone else, that's just a click. For her, it's like, that's not the right click. And she
That's-
like stops you.
As you run up, I need everybody to make a dex save.
She's trying to put her goggles on that.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Where's my...
Oh no.
Oh,
These
gosh.
checks are going so much better than I anticipated. It's
Oh
great.
no. I'm 7.
Okay.
1 second. 7, 8.
Am I falling?
Okay.
Well,
This is a dex
your
save, yeah?
dex check 13, Cinder? Okay. And next?
Dex save or dex check?
Dex save.
Let's say.
Okay. Cool.
On a side
not
note,
great,
that rope...
but... okay. It would have been an 8. But... Flash of Genius. I'll post it for the DM so you can read it. It basically adds a +5 to an ability check or saving throw to either herself or someone within 30 feet. Before she does this, who failed worse than she did? Because she would try and help them. Lorcan.
By only 1 point though.
But okay. Just trying to think. Okay, so DM, can you tell me like what happened, and then I can describe how she adds that +5 to his roll
To who are you adding it?
to him,
I
because
would
he's
take
worse
that
off.
myself, honestly.
So what happens is, as you stride over to check the rudder, like, what is he doing? What is happening here? You haven't been managing for the past few minutes the air, and you're changing. Like, you're going from plains to a mountainous region. So the air pressure is changing. And so suddenly the balloon kind of drops an air pocket.
Oh, there goes my stomach.
Yeah, and Lorcan just kind of, whoa. But Nix, you extend a hand to him, and he grabs onto the rudder and he holds himself. But you roll.
Yeah.
You
So I
lose
would
your
say-
footing and roll just 5 feet to the side. You're not like falling off the ship.
Okay. Yeah. All good. I would just say like if that was the case, she would have felt that would have happened. Like would have gone through her head in, like a flash of a moment, and she would have felt that turbulence like before it happened, and she would go grab her, and she'd like tell him to like just tense himself, and he would have done so, and then she would have like rolled back as the turbulence kicked in.
Nix, be careful. You're gonna
She goes,
roll
"I'm
off
fine.
the
I'm
radio."
fine." And she-
Did my eye fall out?
No, it wasn't. You're fine.
Okay, so I take it then Nix needs to go check on the on the altitude.
Yes. You know
Yeah.
that if you need. Whatever is going on with the rudder is not stopping him steering. It's just whatever he's steering in the wrong direction. So maybe you can check it later, but until you pass the mountainous region, you need to be on point.
That's priority.
Yeah.
She gets up and scurries off towards the continual flame regulator.
Alright. So as you go back and start managing the altitude and the air pockets in this mountainous region, I need everybody's last check
Oh,
for
what
the day,
checks?
for the first day. Survival, and for you,
Uh-oh.
Nix, you know what check to do. Cinder, you need perception.
Do I disadvantage or advantage?
Nexus is back with you, so it's a straight roll.
Can't believe you left. How dare you?
What's your straight roll?
I rolled a 4.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Perfect.
I didn't roll bad at all.
Okay.
Oh.
That was the +1, so I got a 2.
I'm
Nexus
being a
isn't
special-
much help, can I just say?
Yes, Nick?
Sorry, I completely forgot how to play my character. Could I be using guidance as well for these checks? Because it's a
Sure.
check. Yeah? Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. What?
Who are you gonna guide?
Who am I gonna guide?
You don't
It wouldn't matter with me.
Right, so that would have made it a 17 for her.
Okay.
And is it possible to keep an eye on Lorcan? Like, not like
No,
hands-on with him, but like...
This is a complicated
It's-
section you're going through.
Okay, no, good
But
then.
what you do realize, it's getting foggy. Like, the rain clouds are lower at this point. Because it just came over like they funnel in this veil between the mountain ranges. And so it's getting foggy, and Lorcan and Nexus and Cinder don't see much. I mean, it's foggy.
And if they don't see what's going on, they're staring at Jeff. He's fuck all.
Lorcan is confident he's going the right direction. But Nick, on your
Very good.
a few moments, you're already getting the rhythm of what you need to be doing. Whenever you peer down, your heart starts to tighten a bit, because not only are you going lower, he's steering you lower.
Hey, I'm not.
He's you are. You don't know, because you're kind of in the clouds at the minute. You don't know. But Nyx, whenever she looks down, it feels lower every time, because the air pressure feels more manageable as time goes by, and you're not through it yet. So it's either you're lower or you're past the clouds, and you're definitely not past the clouds.
Lord.
So you're lower, and you don't know, because it's all clouds at the minute. You don't know what is happening down below with that hole that you saw you were approaching.
Yeah.
It's coming to nighttime, so who is going to stay up? At least two people need to stay up.
I'm going to bed.
Who's going to bed and who's going to stay up?
I'll stay up.
Okay, so
Just stay up.
basically, you're going to have to switch. So two of you will have to stay up half the night, and then the other half will have to be the other two.
Don't fucking look, you two.
So it's Nyx and Cinder to stay up first. All right.
Are you really gonna leave me and Nexus together?
This is gonna be great. Nyx, what are you doing? Are you doing the rudder, or are you gonna continuing what you're doing?
Yeah, so now that she's addressed the problem with, well, not the problem, but regulating the heat, she'll go look at the rudder and see what's wrong with it.
Okay. So Cinder, are you going to keep on lookout, or are you gonna go do the job that Nyx has been doing?
I'll stop Nyx and I'll tie a rope around her waist
What?
and secure it to the ship so she can be lowered down to look at the rudder.
Alright. So nobody's doing the air thingy?
I think
Nyx is
steering
gonna
that...
tell Cinder to keep an eye on the air thingy.
Are you proficient in nature, Cinder?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you? Okay. All right. I would. Nyx, you're trying to figure out what's wrong with the rudder.
Yes, but before she goes, she's gonna give Cinder like the dummy's guide to continual flame regulators. All you need to do. Oh, go ahead.
I would like you to give me a charisma check.
Oh, really? She's not joking.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'd like Cinder to give me an intelligence check.
Oh.
Nat 20, baby.
All right. What was your roll?
I was very close. I was a nat 19. I was very close.
All right. You explain this. Really, like, really fucking carefully. And Cinder, like, astonishes you because he's not getting one wrong. He's getting it right. You watch him do it a few times, and he's like, okay, this is before Larkin leaves the rotor and goes to bed. And you're like, okay, he's good. Like, Cinder
Yep.
is good.
Yeah, she pats him and goes, keep it up. And she's gonna like, Dylan, please look after him. And she's gonna leave a guidance on him, and she's gonna go.
All right, so give me an investigation check.
Who this? Who do investigation check?
Nick, so you should try to figure out what's wrong with
Oh,
you.
right, me. That's me. I'm next. Ah! No, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. That was just a good Everything's fine. So that would have been 13.
2.
Yes. 13. Bad roll.
You're like, you shouldn't be clicking. Something's wrong here.
But could I add my? I can have Flash of Genius. I can add +5 to that one as well. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18. And she tries to work through it.
Yeah. Sure, so 18. You're not getting it at first, but then you realize you must have done a movement too sharp or something, and a cog is kind of a little out of place. And that's why you've been going kind of the wrong direction. Because it's just kind of leaning towards one side. So,
Bad mechanics, you see.
give me a Tinker's Tool.
Puts the goggles on and gets to work, like cracks out the tools.
Yeah.
Ah, this, okay. That's not good. And let's do that.
Whilst this is happening, Cinder, give me another intelligence check and a perception check. Actually, do your intelligence with advantage because of what your nat 20 and what Nick's helped you with. And
Thank you
can
for
add
that,
a
because
plus.
I rolled a 4 the first time. Oh my god.
And you got guidance. Don't forget you got guidance.
I'm not going to use it on this roll, because I rolled a 4.
Oh, I clicked 2 minutes.
And what's the other?
Would he-
Intelligence is a 4. And I need a...
Would he?
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, would this be a straight or be? But he did get a nat 20 and
I said that
19.
you had advantage.
He did.
Mhm.
But he rolled. Was that bad?
I rolled a 3 and a
Advantage roll,
4.
Peter? Okay, I was thinking. I think she gave you advantage. I was confused.
There is
Perception-
rerolls. You guys have rerolls.
Oh, yeah.
I got...
How
Oh,
much?
yeah. I got a 9 on... I got a 9 on perception.
Okay, that's fine.
16 on the other one.
All right, so you are more focused on keeping the air, like surviving the air pockets rather than looking at what's around you at night.
Probably not as wise, but I accept.
We're
We're in the air. There's nothing out there.
exactly. Nix, yeah, it's not that big of a job. It's not like you have to like dismantle the whole rudder or anything. Takes you a little bit of time, but you fix it. And then I need you next to roll me a survival check. At disadvantage.
Whoa, 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 whoa. She's tied on, don't forget.
She tightens the goggles and she really concentrates on them. Okay. Survival, you said. Okay, it's not terrible. Couldn't be worse. 13. With disadvantage.
So with the rudder fixed, you start to get in the right direction.
Oh, we go that. I was going to say, we go that far. Isn't that straight across the pole?
But...
Problem. So, suddenly,
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Suddenly, the DM goes, suddenly, uh-oh.
Suddenly. I know this looks like daytime. I hate it. It's terrible. Actually, do a quick thing.
Dynamic lighting.
Oh yeah.
Dun dun dun.
You guys, let me double check that your tokens have the correct dynamic lighting. Yeah, I think everybody has the correct dynamic lighting. Alright, and Cinder, you're actually over here. Nyx, you're over here. You guys are in bed.
I'm on the big map.
Yeah, I know. I'm moving you guys around, preparing for.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
That's pitch black.
Yeah, I know. Give me a sec.
What season?
I can if you scroll down.
Do you
Yeah.
have night vision?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I do not.
Perfect. That explains why
I am seeing total blackness.
You should see a little bit now
I see
if you
the
refresh the
whole
page.
thing.
Yes.
Oh, there I am.
I'm doing.
On a side note, I no longer have light either. So,
Alright.
I would.
The fire be giving off light.
The fire would be giving off light. Yes, I'm going to.
No, I'm just curious.
Yes. There you go. Nick.
No. That's better.
Yeah, you basically don't see the level of buff. You have to remember that. Right? Cause let me, if I do this real quick.
You know, me being on night watch might be a bad idea.
Why?
Because I can't see at night.
We should have thought of that.
Wait, you're in bed. Hush. Why am I talking to Lorcan?
A very good. I can hear you through the floor.
It's so loud.
What's going on? No. No.
I like the panic. It was like, what's happening?
No, it's very dark. No.
Alright. Are you good?
I see Nexus
You do? How do you see Nexus?
because I have control of the character, maybe.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Yeah. That's,
Yeah, I can move the character.
that's fine. No worries. That's okay. So you're technically only seeing your group. Yeah, so you guys are, Nyx is managing the rudder now fixed. You're sure you're now heading in the direction that you wanted to head out in the first place. It's very foggy and you see bits of snow, like it's been raining all day, but here in the mountains it's kind of has little drips of snow. Cinder is focused on managing the continual flame, the height, and the air pockets. And suddenly, what is your passive perception, Nyx?
That is 22.
Suddenly, you hear this of wings, multiple wings beating, but like almost insect-like wings.
Like,
But
like,
really large. And yeah, Larkin, there's something like a danger, a sense that awakens you, wakes you up.
We'll wake up next.
Why?
Get away from you and your companion.
Within a range of.
30 feet.
Any of your companions are unsurprised, except otherwise not much.
All right, okay. So as Larkin and Nexus shut awake at a feeling that something's wrong, Nyx, you slowly turn back. And you have dark vision, right, Nix? You see.
Yeah.
Can I start trying to charge?
This is all happening simultaneously. We're gonna go into initiative in a minute.
No.
You see two things chasing after you. Right
Does
at the
it wake
edge
me
of
up?
Right at the edge of your vision. I will show you all what they look like.
I don't want to see till I see.
It's a what?
Trust me, you don't want to see.
There you go. That's what it looks like.
Oh, it's a Chasme, I think.
Correct.
Where's
Spoilers.
that phone thing?
These two are coming at you.
What the hell is that?
Okay, and we will roll initiative.
That's a bull.
Roll initiative, people!
And I will roll for next.
17. But I will roll it to get me in the thing.
1 second, you can use a reroll point.
Oh, I like that roll better, but
Well, you use a reroll, so.
I did, yeah.
I can't change my number. There.
Nick, what is your initiative?
Didn't work out very well.
18.
What is your initiative?
15.
Alright.
48.
Double advantage. I'm a bit missed.
Alright. Let's get initiative going. Nexus wakes up and darts
I
out.
said 15, not 18.
I clicked 15.
I think you put it in mine. I fixed mine. Mine was 18.
Okay. So he has to dash.
There's a door there. I can't see the door.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I literally did that just now.
I know.
So he dashes up to here. That's his turn. Nix, what do? You know that whatever happens, somebody still needs to steer the ship.
I'm so scared.
Mm. Okay. How far? 55, right? Ish.
Mhm.
From the ship. And closing, I would assume. How
Oh,
fast are we going? Are they? They're faster. Alright, they're catching it. Okay.
Yeah, come on.
You don't know if they're faster because
They're keeping pace
you,
with the ship.
you heard it come from below rather
Okay.
than chasing you.
Gotcha.
That's why they also woke up, because they heard it as it was coming from below.
Okay. Alright. So next. Okay, so Nyx is going to look as she can see them clearly, or makes
can
out.
You can make them out. Yeah, don't forget it's nighttime, so it's kind of like black and white. But you
hard-
see these two
hard to
giant,
tell.
like bug-like creatures. Yeah.
What color?
Would
Black and
Okay.
white. In black and white, shades of gray.
could she make a quick? If I have it really quick, could you make a quick check to see what they can be, especially after what she's read to some of her notes? Would she have come across these things or not?
I would say at the minute, I would allow you to do a quick either nature or arcana check, but
Okay.
at disadvantage. You're trying to keep.
I was gonna say
on-
I'm more than happy to do it at
Yeah,
disadvantage
nice.
of the conditions.
It's more, yeah. It's because you're trying to steer the ship at the same time.
Pretty good even for disadvantage. That was 22.
You get the sense these are demons from that hole that have come up.
Oh, yay.
Okay.
Didn't like.
Alright.
What do you do?
She needs everyone. Like she needs to outline this threat. So she's got to see the bug, the big bug, and she's gonna like, you know, do this, and she's going to do a quick prayer to Dellen, and then she's going to summon all that ingenuity that she uses for her daily life, and just make it actual energy, and fire a guiding bolt, ingenuity bolt at the Casme on the right. Yeah. Oops. I am not. Yes, that one.
Roll
That
to
one.
hit.
Alright. Checking this one. Oh no. 9 plus. It's not bad. Ooh, 16. No. 17. That's it.
Sorry, 17?
Hmm.
That hits.
Alright. Wow. Can I reroll the damage with my reroll? Can we do that?
Yeah, rerolls work that way.
Yeah. Cool. I appreciate that. Come on, 46. Come on!
Alright.
Note to self, do not use digital die ever again for rolling damage. Got it.
Please place your reroll.
I want to complain to the reroll services line, if that's possible. That's fine.
Alright.
9 points of damage,
9
but the
points
most
of
important thing, as it hits it, her purple aura outlines it, so everyone can see this thing
Yeah.
coming. And then she's gonna, as she does that, she's immediately going to look at her utility wristwatch and just like code it in something, and she's gonna activate Sanctuary Field. So she's gonna cast Sanctuary as a bonus action.
Alright.
And she can turn her attention back to the rudder.
So because this action you attacked, you're not going to be steering for this action.
Right. Most
Oh,
important, just
that sort of game.
it is that sort of game. That's fine.
Great.
Cinder.
I don't
Same
know.
applies to you. You either continue doing your thing with the air to control the air, or do something about these bugs.
How big are those books?
They are
How
lots.
far away are they from Nick?
It's from you, or it's as the
From the
map
back of the boat.
So they're about 80 feet from you, about 50 from the back of the boat.
Okay, I'm gonna come to the back of the boat and require a wisdom saving throw.
From
Whichever one is
Nick.
closest.
they're both the same. The one that you can see, I assume, because the other one is in the
The one
dark.
that's like this wild aura.
You're trying to polymorph it. Okay, so it has advantage.
What? You didn't tell me that.
No, it has magic resistance.
Okay.
However, with advantage it rolled a 14.
So that saves.
Correct.
Do you have a
Okay.
reroll you want to spend?
No. Yeah. I'll use a reroll. That's my highest level spell, so please reroll that.
That's a 19.
Ah, jerk. Okay, I'm coming back to do my job.
Wait. Oh, no, it's correct. It's correct. I
Wait,
thought, no.
how much movement do I have here? I can't come back yet.
Nope, not yet. Alright.
What a ripoff.
Lorcan. It will take your entire action to get upstairs
I
and
will
dash.
use my entire.
Actually, no, because you're technically closer.
Oh right, so.
Let me see. Yeah, so you would get here.
On the other side.
You would get here, with your normal movement.
There.
Where I put you. Yeah.
Okay. Can I see anything from there?
Can you see anything from there?
The stairs. I can see, but I meant like, can I see?
Yeah, because they're
past-
coming from underneath. So I've put them there so you can measure distance, but they're underneath. They're not.
That's what I was asking.
But on each side of the boat. So yeah, you can see them.
Well, no, because they're on a raised section on the boat.
Yeah, but they're underneath the boat.
I'm not looking down. I'm looking towards where they are.
You heard it come from underneath.
Oh, did I?
I've explained.
So would I be nearer the edge to look over, or?
Yeah, you could be here. That's fine. It's still on the stairs. So just imagine that the distance they're from you right now, they're underneath.
Can I dash up there?
Up
Or is
where?
that with to where the others are?
You can take your action to dash it.
Because I can't do. Well, Let's put it this way. I'm not a ranged fighter.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be. Or even a weapon user. So I kind of have to wait for them to get in.
Yeah.
And I prefer to be in between them. So I'm going to run to about exactly there, right in the middle of everything.
All right.
Now, and I'm going to say, Nix! What did you do?
She goes, demons. She has no time. Can't talk. Demons.
I know, but you weren't there earlier.
Any bonus actions?
Now, if I grow large, now, here's a hypothetical question. If I grow large, will this boat tip to one side?
Roll me an intelligence check.
Thank you.
Nat 1. Uh-oh. I'm gonna blow us up. I'm gonna tip us over.
I forgot to use silvery barbs before. Darn it.
Can I just state, my intelligence has a +0 on my
It would, just to clarify, Peter, the second roll was a 19 and a 14, so a silvery bars in the
Okay.
You're fine. It was not meant to be.
On what?
Because I got a 9. Am I smart enough to figure out that if I
Not
go
in
back-
that, not in that rate, not in that rush of things happening. No,
God damn it.
you're gonna become large.
I'm
It's
gonna
fine.
become large. I know
It'll be
I'm
fine.
large. Are you sure?
Pretty sure that. Come on. All right. Is that your turn?
Yes.
Okay. So your ship is faster than them. They are not catching up. However, you do see them, their little claws extend, and these two kind of drop out of sight, but both of them summon one much closer to you.
They summon stuff? Did they just teleport?
No, so those two fell behind, but they both summoned something 60 feet above, so kind of where you are.
Okay.
Can I just have the DM do the Kazme summoning? Thank you. Yeah, that was great. They're like,
It's the
Delightful.
And I need everybody to roll me a
cry? I can cry for free. I don't need to do a dex save for that. Okay.
Is that a strength save?
Dex save.
Sorry, was
Dex
that
save.
A dex save.
But I'm holding on to the ship.
Yeah, but we still do a dex save.
God damn it.
Okay.
Oh!
So that would have been a 10, but Flash of Genius, 15.
You're fine.
I got a 21.
You're fine. Nexus is fine. Cinder,
19.
you're good.
Rolled really well.
Alright, so as he grows large and two bugs perch on the ship,
What? Yeah.
it tips. It starts. You, you all manage to hold yourselves in your position, but the the balloon is starting to tip.
Do I get a reaction here in front of me, or is it
No.
when I leave?
No, it's when they move out of your range. For her flash of genius, she would have gone counterbalance to everyone, like, because the weight difference would have, like, so she has to lean.
Next, what are you gonna balance?
All right, Nexus.
She just anchors herself. Like she
Nexus is
grabs
gonna
on.
rage, and he's gonna be real dumb because that's what he is.
He's gonna run
I
towards-
agree.
I'm sorry. Just because he's a barbarian doesn't make him
He has
automatically
an 8
stupid.
intelligence.
Okay, he's stupid.
Yes, and Nix likes him.
He
Oh.
is going to run and jump
What?
onto the onto the one of the bugs and smack on him. Now he's gonna. I know what he's trying to do. We're gonna see if he's successful.
Are you trying to kill Nexus?
Why would I try to kill him?
I don't know.
He's
Why not?
reckless, so he has advantage. 17 hits.
I'm concerned.
Now his unarmed strikes are a little powerful, if I remember correctly.
Why did he have a ball?
No, he has a feat. He had a feat. Am I tripping?
Like Tavern Brawler?
Oh no, I changed his subclass. Never mind.
Oh, never mind.
He would have come down with his great axe instead then, because I forgot I changed his subclass. And I'm not gonna punish you guys for it.
Aha!
So he comes down with this great axe on top of him. That was beautiful. That was minimum damage. Plus rage, which is how much is the rage?
2. Plus 2.
That's 8 points of damage. However, he is trying to get it off. I'm going to roll his second attack with advantage. That's beautiful.
That
Way
is
better.
beautiful.
That was way
How about
better
this?
as well.
The damage is even. Yeah, the damage is good too.
So 16 plus
Oh,
8, we're
16.
on 24 points of damage. And he manages to get this bug off. And I will give him a dex save to see if he can hang on to the side.
Watch out for that one, alright?
Or fall. He definitely hangs on. He's hanging on, like, to the side. He's kind of half in,
No.
half out.
Oh, I thought you was in front of me then. I was like, no.
Nope,
No.
nope, is there. Nyx, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna leave another turn without touching the rudder?
Nyx is like she was like about. She like grabs on, manages not to fall, and then sees Nexus fly through the air. She's like, "Is this man about to die on me?" And he's like, and lands on the and starts hitting it, and then sees him almost slip, but she's like, Nexus is gonna be Nexus. It's okay. Need to focus. So she's gonna focus on steering the ship for this turn.
Okay, so
So,
give me a survival check with disadvantage. Because you didn't steer it.
Is it because of the stress? That is fair.
No.
That is very
because
fair.
you didn't
I will
steer it
take
last
that
time.
disadvantage. Wow! Not gonna believe it. Double 17 with a disadvantage.
Wow.
So that's gonna
Nice.
be.
You
Yeah, it was great.
regain control of the ship, and you discover somehow how Lorcan managed to slowly steer you down. So you managed to start pointing the front of the ship down to try to balance it back. You regain control of the ship.
Yeah, that would have been like a 21. It was like a +4, so it's not
And
bad.
bonus
with
action.
disadvantage. Bonus action. Breathe. Steady breath. There's steady aim and there's steady breath. It's like she's like trying to keep done. No, that's her for now.
All right, Cinder.
Okay.
I actually did a boo boo before Cinder. Let me just check something. I have to re-roll initiative. for
Before I
these
brew.
guys.
Oh yeah, you do because they're new
They're
ones, right?
technically new ones. So before Cinder,
With a 10?
No, before Cinder, no.
Are they hooked on to the railing or something?
yeah, these are these are
Hooked on.
hooked on.
Well, one of them's not, is it?
This one that what? No, they both are.
Nexus, I thought knocked it off.
Oh yeah, Nexus knocked it off. That is true. That is true. But it's not been an entire round, so it's still kind of with.
It's
the
keeping
shield.
pace for now.
For now, it is going to.
Which one's the one hitting?
It's the one that Nexus is on.
How?
It is going to. Well, actually, is it at the start of your turn or is it when you enter it?
That's a good question.
Check.
Any creature that starts its turn within 30 feet. Okay. So technically you guys would have needed. I need
Wisdom save.
wisdom saves.
Oh.
No, I need con saves.
Oh, that's alright.
I
Yeah,
need
but-
con saves. No, not from you, Larkin. I need con saves just from Nexus and Nick.
That's not alright.
It's the beating of the wings that's the thing that gave she's
Yes.
distinct. Yes.
Not me, right?
Not you yet.
Thank God, because I rolled a net 1.
I would like to say that she's really good under pressure. I'm glad I did bonus action steady breath because that was a nat 20 for a 24.
Nice.
Why would I have taken it?
Because it's at the start of your turn. So, okay. Since it's done that, it is going to do proboscis.
What's that?
It's going to attack.
Is it the top one or bottom one?
Okay.
17 to hit Nexus.
It's with advantage as well
does.
because he's reckless.
Which is within 5 feet.
Yes, it is with advantage. What do you mean, Sentinel?
So attack it. So, when a creature within 5 feet makes an attack against a target other than you.
Against another creature he can attack if it's within range.
Alright,
You
sure.
use, make him a lead.
Smack it, and he's a big boy.
It missed. It missed Nexus, but you can definitely attack.
And I am going to try and hit it with my hammer
Alright.
and try and knock it back as far as possible.
That one he hits Cinder on the head and he goes bonk and he falls off.
Like I have before.
Roll to hit.
What's that? That's a dirty 20.
That hits.
Hey.
Roll damage.
Am I? Double-handing it also?
If you're trying to get it away, I'd say
I think
you're
how many
double
is it?
handing.
Yeah, no, that's double handing it anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's that?
Does your character have a shield?
Yeah.
You don't have a shield ticked on for your AC? Double check
Wow,
that.
that's 17. No, it's not.
Perfect.
Hey.
So double handed damage.
8 and a 4. 8.
So that's 12.
12 plus 4.
16.
16. Bludgeoning. I'm hopefully hitting away.
Your weapon is magical, isn't it?
It is.
It doesn't matter actually. That's fine. You hit it and it's kind of like a bit dazed, but actually I need a con save. Let's see if you. Oh no, because it's not been your turn. No, that's your reaction. That's fine. Well done.
Nice reaction.
Correct.
He's like, ah.
And now I got another.
Yes, and that's its turn. Cinder. I need a
Con save?
save.
Oh, God. Oh, good. I have a good con save. 17. Right? 9 plus 7 is 17.
That is fine. You're fine.
Okay. How far away from me is that thing?
Right now, about 5 feet.
Have I not pushed it back any further?
No, not with the reaction. Definitely not.
I don't have a whole lot of options actually, so I am going to. I can't even do sanctuary. Ugh. I'm not used to playing a sorcerer.
You can you can see that it's hurt. This thing is hurt.
Okay, well, I am going to lift my hands. Is it the only thing looking at me?
Everybody else has its back to you.
Nexus, who's trying to climb back up into the boat.
No, he's hanging.
Alright.
Okay, I'm gonna lift my eye patch and say, "Hey, you!" and show it my basilisk guy.
Who are you calling to?
Oh no!
Aaron looks at him.
Oh wow! An 11 with disadvantage. I believe the DC is 13.
I
Yes,
don't
it is.
remember.
From memory, I think it is.
I think I told you to write it down.
Well,
Peter.
I'm sure I did some.
Peter.
What was it?
It was an 11. I believe your DC is 13.
12.
It's
So
12, actually.
Woo!
Still failed. So you all just see, you just smack this thing, and you suddenly see it turn to stone and drop.
It's not attached to the boat.
Bye, Nexus.
No, that Nexus managed to unattach it
Oh.
from the boat.
It takes two turns. It starts to be petrified now, and then if it fails
won't
again.
matter because if it starts petrified now.
To
it will
slow
make
down,
it
it's just gonna go.
Yeah, basically. So it doesn't matter.
Its wings start freezing already.
Cinder, I will allow that as a bonus action because it's just flipping the thing.
Oh, okay, then Beacon of Hope.
Yeah, it becomes incapacitated. No, wait, what?
No, it starts to slow down.
It's petrified, yeah.
It's restrained. Yeah.
It's restrained, so it will fall anyway.
But that's it's 0 movement, so it will start to like.
Yeah,
Fall
it'll
back.
disappear instantly.
Peter, what are you doing with your action?
Beacon of Hope.
You're not going back to do your job at
Oh,
the...
yeah, altitude.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that, but I also want Beacon of Hope.
Okay. Sure.
I love when Mariana's like, "Are you sure you don't want to do the job that's been assigned to you?" Okay, okay.
And then I'm going back after I pry Nexus's fingers off the railing. I will go back.
Stop.
Alright, you go back to your post. Alright. Lorcan needs a con save, please.
I love you, Peter. It's funny. Yes, I would like to do that, but still, Beacon of Hope.
17.
17, you're fine. What do you do with your turn?
How strongly is it holding onto this boat?
I like that
Nexus
question.
was able to get it off.
Oh, so now you're comparing them? So, oh, your friend is strong enough. Are you strong enough?
Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's possible.
I am going to use my breath attack.
Ooh.
Breath.
Ooh,
Burn 'em.
do it. What is it,
So-
con save?
Oh.
Strength saving throw, DC 14.
Strength save.
Is that bad or good?
Is Lorcan doing the big bad wolf? He's like, I puff and I puff.
So that was a 21.
Oh, okay. It's good.
Aww.
It's not-
Silvery barbs.
All
Silvery
right.
He
barbs.
remembered.
All right.
Yeah! Where's my silvery barbs here? There.
Disadvantage. That's a
Disadvantage.
Hey!
Hey!
Did it work? What happened?
Yeah, it worked.
That's
We
it.
rolled a 6.
What happens?
You just see it topple backwards over as Rorken just shouts, "Fuck off!"
Advantage to Lorcan.
Nice.
How far back?
It's 20 foot. 20 foot. And it's not prone, if it can be prone in the air.
It can be prone. It starts falling way faster. You guys did it.
Like a
That's
rock.
fine. It's gone. You're out of initiative. However, before we're fully out of initiative, I
Crash
need
into the floor, sorry.
Nix to do me another survival check at disadvantage, and I need Lorcan and Nexus to do a dexterity save at disadvantage unless they have advantage for some reason. And Cinder, you need to do me a straight dex save.
Guidance good?
It's a dex save first.
Straight deck, so.
Oh, who's doing a deck save?
That could be worse. That's a 13.
Yes, you need to do a survival at disadvantage and a dex save at disadvantage. A straight roll dex save.
Okay.
12 is fine. 13 is fine.
Yes, good.
Nexus has advantage, so he got a straight roll. Nix? Me?
Part of me is like, what? Like, should I alter the fates? I think I should. Part of me wanted to see what would happen on this instance. I'm gonna use a reroll point to counterbalance the net one.
For what? For
I'm
the
not
dex
that
save?
For the deck save, yeah. I think that's important.
But to be fair, Lorcan is just behind you as a large creature.
That's not a nat 1, it's a 12.
12 is fine. You pass your dex save. What about your survival check at disadvantage?
I'm gonna do that now. I was just contemplating how Nick dies without nat 1 for a second. One second. Okay. Not as good as last time, so what's the +4? Am I allowed to guide myself for this, or is it happening too quick?
Too late.
This is all happening too quick. No, I said it before, but she didn't confirm. It's all good. 6. Yeah, it would have been a 6. I'll use a flash of genius to make it an 11.
Okay, that's
Reroll.
that's reasonable.
Stop that.
That's,
What?
You can
11's
reroll.
alright.
He's played a reroll for you to reroll.
Oh, actually no. I don't know why I thought it was like silvery bar. Stop doing that. I reroll. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cinder's like, I don't want to die here.
Oh, that's better. So that would have been, and that would have been 14. So it was 7.
All
It's a
right,
bit better.
all right. You managed to remain in control of the ship, even though it's kind of like that because of the air pockets not being managed.
We hit turbulence, everyone.
We hit turbulence.
Yeah,
Everybody, keep your hands, your feet, your hands and feet inside of the vehicle.
Well, Nexus is hanging outside the ship, so did he fall?
Nexus manages to bring himself back up, and Lorcan, very quickly a minute passes, and you return to your normal size. And,
Gosh.
and the Nyx has been putting the tip of the ship down, and suddenly you guys are going down. There's the big weight at the back.
Oh, he's been trying to, point it down.
Yeah, exactly. So the big weight at the back disappears. So the
Course correction. And she pulls it back like one of those pilots, like.
You're trying. All right. That is pass. That is pass. It's almost time to shift. So Lorcan and Nexus, you can mark a long rest. And
we would have had that before the fight, I'm guessing?
yeah, you would have. Yeah.
So there's no point.
There's no point. Okay, good. And
Are they wounded?
no, I don't think anybody got wounded actually. He would have, but it missed. And Nyx and Cinder, you guys go downstairs and switch it up. So now, Lorcan, are you going to be doing the
yes, Lorcan will be doing the fire.
Okay,
thing.
Nix, I want a charisma check. Larkin, I want an intelligence check.
God damn it.
You know, Miranda. You know how so. You know, this is obviously payback, isn't it?
Intelligence check.
For
was
this.
that. Should I go for my light side or my dark side?
This is
Good job.
interesting. It was another nat 19. This is a solid 19.
I got a solid 10.
Okay, you're going to be rolling straight, not advantage, but not a disadvantage.
You're allowed to be straight.
Mariana,
Yes.
could you give me vision through their tokens so the stream can see it?
Oh, the stream can see. Yeah. I will do. 1 second.
It would
one
be
second.
for the ... one.
Yeah,
Actually-
Yeah. Give me a sec.
I'll let you finish that first.
Or the ... Alright, you should be able to have vision.
One second.
Yes?
1 second. Just because it's very important, she's gonna take her time. So she's gonna see that he's like, yes. And she goes, you didn't get a word I just said, is it? Yes.
I did. I did.
So she's
He's
gonna
like,
take
"Look,
an extra
I can
moment.
Close it,
She-
I can open it, I can close it, I can open it.
This
It's
makes
fine.
us go.
She's
down.
she's gonna write it down
Uh-huh.
for him. So I'll use another charge of Flash of G. She's gonna write it down for him. And this is, I'm
that
just gonna
would
hand.
make
So
it
that's
a
a 15. That's a 15.
Can he
I would
read?
say that is enough to give you advantage on the roll.
So it's still up and down.
Eventually,
Mm,
Nick
she just-
goes to sleep.
She just points at the part that he tucks it into his pocket. Like, read this if you need it. It's just like,
Thank you.
Okay?
Good night.
Larkin,
Nice.
give me... I need Larkin to give me... an intelligence check with advantage. Are you proficient in nature?
No.
Then yes.
Do I have a plus
before she
0?
goes to bed,
Yes.
while he's doing this, she's gonna go to Nexus and she's gonna kick him in the shin. She's like,
Whoa! Open it!
why? Why are you jumping? Like, you were in the air. You almost fell. She's just like really angry at him.
I'm
Make me
fine.
wa- like, she's-
Go to sleep.
she's-
You decide to get grumpy.
Ooh.
Get my reroll.
Because-
I
Ooh.
deleted it. It's fine.
Why?
Because I saw it, so it's... How much?
It was a 6 with advantage. So I'm gonna
He's going to reroll.
So
What did you roll? What did you roll?
That one.
with advantage.
Wow. That will cause Nexus to have disadvantage.
I rolled a 3 and a 4.
Oh, but Nexus rolled a nat 20 and a 14, so he manages to correct it. And he goes,
You mean I'm doing it wrong? I want to read the notes.
okay. Last check of the night, again.
Who's doing my job?
No, I would say not really.
Well, they can't hear us screaming to each other.
No, I wouldn't say that. Not at this point. With advantage?
not yet.
You
Much better.
Indeed. And a 15. So eventually daybreak comes, everybody wakes up, you can mark a long rest. And Nix, you take a minute to look around.
I didn't break it.
I think it wasn't me. They point at each other like this.
And you guys are over here.
I will draw the line. How did we get there? Around the mountains or across the mountains?
Around the mountains.
Around the mountains.
Over the hole?
Yeah, that's why there were demons. Peter.
There was demons.
Peter processing. Yeah.
We just go through it. We didn't
You
go
were
under
lucky
it.
because the next turn they were gonna summon another one. They can make their
The drill.
to drill through the balloon. So you guys were really
You
lucky.
what?
Yeah. Anyway, you are going the right direction. You're back on course, and because overall you guys passed all the checks on the first day, we're just gonna do one check on this day.
Oh,
So
can I say something?
go for it.
Before I got my long rest, I cast Create Food and Water.
Oh yeah, to get everybody food. That's fine. That's okay. That's fine. I wasn't gonna be mean and make that a problem because I know you can provide sustenance to everybody. So who is doing what on the second day?
Lorcan will be observing.
You gonna do perception checks?
Yes.
All right.
Well, should I do perception? I should not do perception checks.
So there's only 3 jobs. Well, there's technically 4 jobs. You can be helping somebody.
I will be helping somebody.
Who will you be helping? Wait, let's see what everybody else is doing. Where is Nyx going to be stationed?
She doesn't trust anyone. No offense, to keep an eye on the regulator. Like they're good, but
Okay.
But you trust
actually, one second. Actually, she's explained this to a few people, so maybe she might. The main problem seems to be the steering right now.
Yeah.
So she's gonna go and she's gonna be one steer. She's gonna keep because it's all like the rudder's also a bit dodgy, so she just fixed it. So she's gonna keep an eye on it. So she's gonna be trying to course correct.
So you're going to be on the rudder. Cinder, are you going to be doing the air thingy? Or I don't know the name. Or are you going to do your perception?
The air thingy.
I'm going to do the air thingy.
Okay. And
I don't know what it is either.
So look out. And what are you going to be? Who are you going to be helping? Nexus, or Cinder?
Probably Nexus.
All right. Okay, so Nexus is going to be doing
like
an
Cinder
intelligence
has a
check.
good grasp.
By the way, he's doing a straight roll even with your help because Nix didn't explain. Oh no, Cinder's doing the air thing.
Cinder's doing it.
So he's doing perception. That's fine.
He is.
I got confused.
He's good at it.
He's decent.
And I'm bad at it.
So with
who's
advantage of 20, it's fine. Nix, I need you to roll me a survival check. Wait, actually, beforehand,
Survival.
Cinder, I would like you to roll me an intelligence check.
Does he get advantage?
19.
Beautiful.
Never mind.
Nix, straight roll for survival.
Straight roll. She is going to consult the
can
notes
guide
from
yourself.
yesterday. It's not guidance, but thank you. It was enhanced ability.
That's
She was
fine,
to consult her
advantage.
notes. She would have taken notes on what not to do and gave herself advantage on that.
All right.
If this fails now, I'll say so badly I told you so.
It'd be so funny. Yeah, I know. Ah! That was cool. Okay. that's
That
not bad.
noise you
Okay.
made.
It's a good noise, trust me. It's not a bad.
Then crashes the
You
balloon
could
on
tell. It's a 20. 20.
Okay. You guys get through the second day fine. You're on course. You're on course. And, over the day and during the night, you do your shifts. Everybody knows what they're doing now. You're managing. Smoother than you thought. And then the last day comes. And you see the wastelands. But all you see is about maybe 10 miles of dunes, of sand dunes, and then you see a massive sandstorm. You have heard about this sandstorm. This is what nobody can pass. And you're not really sure how you're going to approach this.
Nix, that big wall of sand, by any chance, do we know how to stop the balloon?
As you say that, you hear the and you
She just
all
hold that
look
thought.
up because as you start to enter the wastelands, you feel this wave of warmth, but there's something at play here. Like some sort of magical influence in this place. I want everybody that wants to do so an Arcana check.
I will try.
Ooh. 18.
Oh,
Can you not?
I got a 16.
18, 16.
So
I know
with a flash
magic.
of genius, it would have been a 21. Flash of genius 26. She really wants to know.
You've entered a kind of like an anti-magic field area,
Oh
Gross.
and the continual flame
no. Yeah.
has gone out.
Sputters out. Yeah, that's what it was like.
Okay. Can I roll on my hotness score to keep heat going up? I have a +9.
Inspiration to Cinder.
Cinder on fire. Would that help?
I will give Cinder inspiration for that. So you're
Cinder just does a pose.
you're starting to descend faster than you would have wanted, but not like collapsing.
Well, at least we'll get down.
She goes. She goes to the regulator. She goes, 1 second. Ash. She goes, it's. It's like, she goes, I know it wasn't you. We're in an anti-magic field. It's not your fault. I was not gonna blame you. She's gonna go take a look and see what she can do. She's gonna pull out her pack and see if she can cobble up something that could help while this is happening. Stand by.
I'm
You
gonna.
look to your pack, and even if you create some sort of fire, like it's not gonna be big enough.
It's
to
not
hold
gonna be
fire.
enough. Yeah, I
I'm
thought
just
so,
gonna go
but
through my
she's
pack
still
as
gonna
well.
try.
What if I give her an oil flask to go with it?
I'm gonna hand her the
Not gonna be
portable forward and say,
And when you're giving up on life at this point, Nick, you're like, at some point, all the hot air is gonna be gone,
What is this
and
flash
it's gonna
for?
crash. And he gives you this portable forge that he took from the drow hideout that creates intense heat to form metal. To forge metal.
I've got to give you this.
All you gotta do is lit it up. It will create enough heat inside as long as you close it.
We're gonna.
Please
So we're gonna.
slow your descent.
We're gonna say that she goes, I have good news and bad news. She goes, who do you want the bad news first or the good news?
Nix, don't you think I have enough bad news? I'm dying here.
Okay, so good news, we made it. Bad news, we
I'm
have no
gonna
control
live!
of our descent.
I'm gonna die!
And Cinder, you feel that power of the greater restoration that your goddess kept casting on you disappear.
What?
Me? Me?
Yes. Yes.
That's it, I
And
quit.
It's anti-magic.
Same for Nexus. You cast it on Nexus, it's gone. That feeling of like that that disease being slowed and contained, it's slowing down. It's definitely not slowed anymore.
Oh no.
My chin kind of cracks on the cheeks and my jaw hangs
Definitely
down.
Both of their complexions look considerably worse.
Shoot.
I got a crack of skin spreading down my cheek and neck with pus oozing out. Pretty much I look like that.
Nix's idea was, because this is before the item. She was like, she would have probably tried to cast like flaming sphere in place of continual flame to kind of slow the descent. That's all she could do. She would have gone, I will, and she would have gone, we've run out of heat. There's an anti-magic field that's cancelled out the continual flame. We don't have heat. I've tried. Oh wait, sorry, it's anti-magic field. She wouldn't cast. I'm stupid. I'm not gonna mark off anything. I'm stupid. I am dumb. She's gonna explain that to them. She goes, I don't have anything to make intense heat. any
You'll just
spell
be
that I could
Lorcan,
have.
throwing things out of his backpack.
She goes, I'm so sorry, I'm doing my best. And he's in the background just like rifling through his pack.
And then he brings it.
Catch this!
I pull a total of 6 flasks of oil out.
It's almost your size, Nix. You don't catch it, you dodge it.
It's 20 pounds.
And you realize that even if it's a small fire that you lit in this thing, it contains the heat so much that if you manage to place it at the top, it won't keep you in the air, but it will slow down your descent. It will make it manageable. So you light it up, I assume, right? You light it up, you put it in place. Nexus will help you hold it there because there's not really a place to hold it. And it slowly comes down. Takes about
First of all,
20 minutes till you land, but you land. Not beautifully, but you land.
Cinder is gonna run and jump off saying, I'm ready to die! Right when we land, and I end up landing on the ground like 10 feet beneath us.
Okay. As you land, you can see the sandstorm. You can put yourselves anywhere on the map.
Oh no.
Whoa. Anywhere?
On this side.
Damn, that's a big map.
Anywhere
That's
on
a
this
big one. I'm way down there. Now
Cinder,
I gotta get
as
the...
soon as you touch the sand,
Why are you picking on me?
right, Frank, this is
soon
the
as
good
you
news.
touch the sand, what did Cinder look like before he was infected?
Before I was infected?
That's just how he looked like always.
You can shift Z my token. Actually, I don't remember.
Cameron?
Incredibly handsome and debonair. The most handsome. That's not it. The most handsome, black-haired, goateed looking Firbolg you could ever see. My ears are not drooping, they're standing erect. And
Hey.
and I guess my basilisk guy is pushed out and plops to the ground, to the sand, as my new eye grows, my old eye grows back. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
Old
no,
new.
does that mean we all get petrified?
No, it's kind of in the sand.
Oh.
But you all watch this, right? As soon as he touches the ground and you hear his voice, Cinder is entirely back to one of the most handsome people you've ever seen.
And I just kind of float in the air like Beauty and the Beast when he was turned out back to human.
Sure,
And I'm floating around and I go, Nix, how do I look now?
She goes, you look very handsome.
Cinder, you also, your memory is restored. And so you remember what exactly happened when you were attacked. You had been informed of this disease. More importantly, you knew where it started and who was creating it, how it was being spread. You were on your way to go collect this type of magical sand to help the people that were being affected by this. Because you didn't really know who to talk to about where it was coming from. But you were ambushed. There were too many of them.
I don't know what to say, y'all. Above table, I'm in shock.
You know that it was not the serpent god that you've met in recent times that has anything to do with it. you've learned that she cursed the Yuan-Ti people, but they used that as an excuse. They're two different diseases. The Yuan-Ti disease does not spread to anybody else. This was created by a pact between the new tiefling leader, which you sadly encountered,
Oh.
and a very powerful demon.
Oh.
Oh. Okay. I, in a deep sexual voice, I inform my teammates of this. I sound like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Guess what? I'm going to make Nyx my wife.
Nyx was happy for him, but now she takes a step back from him.
Nexus is just back to normal. He wasn't nowhere near, I suppose, to Cinder.
Yeah.
He's back.
Feels good.
Nyx goes.
What the? Like,
You.
It's real.
She goes, looking good, barbarian. And she like pats him.
He gives her makes a big hug, and he pulls in Cinder, and he goes, "You're not half bad, you know."
Ah, now you got these legs
I'm
back.
spoken for.
And then you
Nyx
hear a
just
rumble,
laughs nervously.
A rumble.
a deep rumble. As you look in its direction, you see the sandstorm.
Nexus, that wasn't your stomach, was it?
Please tell me it was your stomach. She looks at Nexus.
No, it's definitely his stomach.
The sandstorm is coming closer.
The sandstorm's moving?
The sandstorm's moving.
Did
It's
it
not
always move?
necessarily moving, it's more becoming bigger.
Oh.
And before you can react, you're encompassed in a whirlwind of sand. That is where we're going to leave it.
Oh, damn.
Of course she was gonna say that. Of course.
I knew that was coming.
Are you guys streaming or are you just playing?
That was awesome.
You guys found a
Nyx is
cure,
nice.
but you don't know why.
Doesn't matter.
And now,
He's not a horrible black dude.
now
thing now.
you are wrapped up in a sandstorm.
Hey, better position than we were when we were falling out the sky.
That is true. You guys did really well with the aerial battle. I could see that going terribly wrong for you.
I can just say, I was really lucky to find that portable forge because I found it and remembered it only at the start of the session.
That's true. He did find it at the start of the session and was like, "Oh, I have to give this to Nick." The game starts, forgets completely, and then when the time
She goes,
was
yeah.
right for it, he remembered.
She's like, I'm so sorry. There's nothing I can do. And he's just like, it's
Finding
bad.
things out.
I know. I saw it before I went to bed. Fuck it! I swear I saw it. Where is it?
Is the portable forge not magical then? It's like
No,
a
it's
little
a
forge.
proper little
Oh,
forge.
It's technology. Yeah.
Cinder is going to pull out his biggest pot from his cooking utensils and put it over his head to keep the sand out of his face. His incredibly handsome
Don't
face.
sign the pot.
We need. Cinder has we have a little homework for Cinder. Find
Uh-oh.
art for his character for next session.
Oh,
so you can
okay.
see the
I can do
beautiful
that.
Cinder. So you can see the pretty Cinder.
Yeah.
The pretty
Finally! I'm no longer dying. Yes!
You don't know yet. It could be that as soon as you step out of the sands, it goes
You are
back.
such a tease.
I don't know. You'll need to figure it out.
If that's the
I mean,
case,
I know, you
Nexus
don't
is dying.
Yeah, yeah. But it's not like I don't know. It's you don't know.
Nexus, could you go get my backpack off the ship, please?
To see if it zips off and it goes back. Well, I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, I really did.
You are in the wastelands.
Cool.
And
Awesome
you learned-
episode.
And Cinder was the first person in Methis to figure out what the disease was and where it was coming from. That's
Wow.
why. It was way too early. Like, if he had told anybody important, he could have stopped a lot of it.
God,
But he got ambushed.
Got a question. Seeing as I'm not brain damaged anymore, does that mean my
Yeah.
intelligence and wisdom go up?
Your intelligence goes up. Wait. Medicine is wisdom, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your wisdom score?
10 or 11.
It goes up to 16.
Oh,
Wow. I was expecting.
Yes!
Oh, he's gonna give him a +1. That'd be nice. 16. Wow.
I want to
He's
dance. I want to dance. You just made my night.
And Nyx's intelligence goes back up to back up to 13 from 8.
why? Next.
Yeah, it's a +5.
Because it was hindering his faculties.
Yes, it does. It does hinder it. They both got a +5. They were infected.
Nice.
Now I don't have to switch around my scores.
I don't have to cheat anymore.
I can become a cleric. Yeah.
Wah!
All right. With that, thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back to seeing what is it about this place that just cured them, and what is happening with this sandstorm. Are they gonna survive it? Did they just get cured to die? We don't know.
Did we level?
No.
Sound.
Level.
Because
No.
it's one of the feat levels next, so that means I get another two ability points.
No. The answer is no. So thank you everyone. Please check out our amazing community in our Discord. Check out our shop with some really cool stuff now that the holidays are coming up, and there's some really cool gift ideas on our shop if you know somebody that likes our content. The Kitty Butt DM is about to run a one-shot in about 10 minutes on the Discord server. So if you want to go check it out, come join us. You can pop in and listen, as long as you're not disturbing anybody and on mute. Feel free to listen. It's gonna be fun. There's a few announcements as well. I believe that today's Saturday, because I'm thinking that today's Wednesday because we're playing Methis. No, today's Saturday. There is some Citizens of Foundling tomorrow, which was the trailer that you saw at the start of the stream, where anybody can play. I believe there's Dragonlance on Monday, right?
Yep.
There's Dragonlance on Monday. There is no more Methis on Wednesday, so that will be 2 weeks on Saturday. But this Saturday, there is coming, next one coming, there is
Strixhaven.
Strixhaven.
Hey.
So, and then on Sunday there will be Strahd, and there'll be a few things in between. So, thank you everyone. Please come and check it out and join our amazing community, and thank you for all your support. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.